The demigods of Elden Ring are not heroes. They are not noble lords waiting to be crowned. They are the twisted remnants of a golden age, each one harboring secrets so dark that the very earth beneath the lands between recoils from their presence. What you think you know about Godwyn, Radahn, Malenia, and the others is merely the surface of a much deeper horror. Tonight we descend into the abyss that birthed these so-called children of grace. We will uncover the mutations that warped their bodies, the betrayals that shattered their souls, and the unspeakable acts that earned them their cursed thrones. By the end of this journey, you will understand why the Golden Order fears its own offspring and why some truths are better left buried beneath the roots of the Erdtree. But first, let me tell you about the night I discovered what really happened to Godwyn the Golden. I was exploring the deep-root depths, that fungal nightmare beneath Lindell, when I found something that made my blood run cold. There, growing from the Prince of Death's corpse, were faces, hundreds of them, all bearing Godwyn's features, all screaming in silent agony. This was not death as we understand it. This was something far worse. The demigods were never meant to exist. They are the result of a cosmic experiment gone horribly wrong. Children born from the union of gods and mortals carrying within them the seeds of their own destruction. Each one represents a different aspect of the greater will's grand design, and each one has failed in ways that would make even the most hardened Tarnished weep. In the coming moments, I will reveal to you the 5 darkest secrets that the Golden Order has desperately tried to hide. We will explore the cannibalistic hunger that drives one demigod to consume his own siblings. We will witness the grotesque transformation of another who merged with an ancient serpent to achieve immortality. We will uncover the truth behind the scarlet rot that turns flesh into living nightmare. And we will discover why one demigod's love became so twisted that it spawned an entire dynasty of blood. These are not the tales of heroes. These are the chronicles of monsters wearing crowns of gold. Our first descent into darkness begins with Morgott, Lord of Blood, whose very existence is an affront to the natural order. You have fought him, perhaps, in his palace beneath the earth. You have seen his cursed blood magic, felt the oppressive weight of his dynasty's influence. But do you know what drove him to such madness? Do you know the price he paid for his throne of thorns? Morgott was not always the Lord of Blood. He was once simply an omen, one of the cursed twins born to Queen Marika herself. But while his brother Morgott chose to serve the Golden Order that rejected him, Morgott embraced something far more sinister. He made contact with an outer god, one whose very name is spoken only in whispers among the most depraved cultists of the lands between. The Formless Mother, they call it. An entity of pure bloodlust that feeds on suffering and anguish. It whispered to Morgott in his darkest hours, promising him power beyond imagination. All he had to do was offer it what it craved most. The blood of innocence spilled in its name. And Morgott, desperate for recognition, for a place in a world that had cast him aside, accepted. But the Formless Mother demanded more than mere sacrifice. It required a vessel, a way to manifest its will in the physical realm. And so Morgott, in his twisted devotion, began the most horrific project in the history of the lands between. He would create a dynasty of blood, a lineage born not of love but of violation and horror. The target of his obsession was Miquella, the Empyrean child of Radahn and Marika. Miquella, eternally young, eternally pure, represented everything that Morgott had been denied. Where Morgott was cursed and rejected, Miquella was blessed and beloved. Where Morgott was monstrous, Miquella was beautiful. The contrast was unbearable, and it drove Morgott to commit acts that would make even the most hardened followers of the frenzied flame recoil in disgust. He kidnapped Miquella from the Haligtree, tearing the sleeping god from the cocoon where he had been attempting his own transformation. But Morgott's intentions were not merely to possess this divine child. No, his plans were far more disturbing. He intended to force Miquella to become his consort, to create through unnatural means a new form of life that would serve as the perfect vessel for the formless mother's influence. The process was abhorrent. Morgott subjected Miquella to rituals that defied comprehension, attempting to accelerate the young god's growth while simultaneously corrupting his essence with cursed blood. The chambers beneath Morgwyn Palace became a laboratory of horrors, where the screams of the innocent mixed with the chanting of blood-drunk cultists. But Miquella's divine nature resisted these violations. His body remained in its eternal slumber, refusing to mature, refusing to be corrupted. This only drove Morgott deeper into madness. He began experimenting with his own followers, transforming them into blood-drunk knights who served as extensions of his will. The sanguine nobles, those pale aristocrats who haunt his palace, are the remnants of once noble houses that he twisted into parodies of their former selves. The most disturbing aspect of Morgott's transformation is how it affected his very perception of reality. He began to see his actions not as violations but as acts of love. In his twisted mind, he was rescuing Miquella from a world that would never appreciate his true worth. The kidnapping became a romantic gesture, the forced transformation a wedding gift. This delusion runs so deep that even as he lies dying, pierced by the Tarnished's blade, he speaks of love and devotion rather than recognizing the horror of his crimes. The blood magic that flows through Morgott's veins is not merely a weapon. It is a corruption that spreads like a plague. Every drop spilled in his name feeds the formless mother, strengthening its hold on the physical realm. The Morgwyn dynasty that he established is not a kingdom but a cancer, spreading its influence through blood pacts and ritual sacrifice. Yet perhaps the most chilling aspect of Morgott's story is how it reflects the failures of the Golden Order itself. His transformation into a monster was not inevitable. It was the result of a system that cast aside its own children when they proved inconvenient. The omens were locked away, hidden from sight, denied even the basic dignity of acknowledgement. Is it any wonder that one of them would seek power in the darkness when the light had rejected him so completely? But Morgott's darkness is only the beginning. His crimes, horrific as they are, pale in comparison to what we will discover about his fellow demigods. The shattering was not merely a war for succession. It was the inevitable result of a family whose very existence was built upon lies, manipulation, and cosmic horror. As we prepare to delve deeper into these forbidden truths, remember that knowledge comes with a price. Once you understand what really happened to these godlike beings, once you see the true nature of their fall from grace, you will never look upon the Golden Order the same way again. The light that emanates from the Erdtree is not divine radiance, but the pale glow of something dying, something that should never have been born. The demigods are not fallen heroes. They are warnings, cautionary tales written in blood and madness, reminders of what happens when mortals dare to play with forces beyond their comprehension. And their stories, dark as they are far from over. Our next journey into the abyss brings us face to face with General Radahn, the Star Scourge, whose legend has been twisted into something far more sinister than the tales of heroism would have you believe. You have witnessed his festival, perhaps participated in that grand spectacle where warriors from across the lands between gather to grant him the mercy of death. But what you saw was not a celebration of a fallen hero. It was a desperate attempt to contain something that should never have been allowed to exist. The truth about Radahn's transformation begins not with the scarlet rot that consumed his mind, but with an obsession that predates even his legendary battle with Malenia. You see, Radahn was never content to be merely the mightiest warrior in the lands between. His hunger for power drove him to commit an act so audacious, so fundamentally wrong that it warped the very fabric of reality itself. He conquered the stars themselves, but this was not some poetic metaphor for his greatness. Radahn literally held the celestial bodies in place through sheer gravitational force, freezing the cosmos in an eternal moment of his own design. The stars that should have moved in their ancient patterns, bringing fate and change to the world below, were trapped in a crystalline prison of his making. Every meteor that should have fallen, every celestial alignment that should have occurred, every cosmic event that the greater will had ordained was held in check by one demigod's overwhelming pride. The consequences of this cosmic violation were immediate and horrifying. The very concept of fate began to break down in the lands between. Prophecies failed to manifest. The natural order of death and rebirth stuttered and collapsed. The stars themselves began to scream in frequencies that only the most sensitive could hear, their anguish echoing across the void. But Radahn's crime went deeper than mere cosmic manipulation. By holding the stars in place, he was effectively holding the future hostage. The eternal cities, those underground realms that had already been punished by the greater will, found their banishment extended indefinitely. The creatures that dwelt in the spaces between stars, beings of pure starlight and ancient wisdom, were trapped in a limbo of Radahn's creation. The festival of Radahn that you witnessed was not born from respect for a fallen general. It was a ritual of necessity, a desperate attempt by the survivors of the shattering to undo the damage he had caused. Every warrior who participated was not seeking glory, but serving as an instrument of cosmic correction. They were not honoring Radahn. They were ending him before his madness could consume what remained of reality. The scarlet rot that eventually claimed his sanity was not the beginning of his downfall, but its culmination. When Malenia bloomed in Caelid, when she unleashed that crimson nightmare upon the world, she was not merely defending herself against an enemy. She was serving as an agent of cosmic justice, bringing punishment to one who had dared to chain the heavens themselves. But even the rot could not fully contain what Radahn had become. His body, massive beyond mortal comprehension, had been twisted by years of channeling gravitational forces that no living being was meant to wield. His flesh had become a living prison for energies that could reshape worlds. His mind, once sharp as the blade he carried, had been fractured by the constant strain of holding back the universe itself. The horse he rode, Leonard, was not a companion but a victim. That poor beast had been subjected to the same gravitational manipulation that Radahn used to hold the stars, its body stretched and warped to carry a burden that defied all natural law. The bond between them was not one of love but of shared suffering, a relationship built on mutual imprisonment. When you finally face Radahn in his festival arena, what you encounter is not a warrior but a force of nature gone wrong. His attacks are not sword techniques but gravitational anomalies given form. The purple energy that surrounds him is not magic but the screaming of space itself, protesting against the violations he has committed. Every meteor he summons is a star crying out for release from his cosmic prison. The most disturbing aspect of Radahn's story is how it reveals the true nature of the demigods' power. They were never meant to be rulers or protectors. They were weapons, living instruments of the greater will's dominion over reality. But like all weapons, they eventually turned on their wielders. Radahn's conquest of the stars was not an act of rebellion, but the inevitable result of a being created for destruction finally fulfilling its purpose. His defeat at the festival does not bring peace, but chaos. The moment his gravitational hold is broken, the stars resume their ancient dance, and fate itself comes crashing down upon the lands between like an avalanche of destiny. The falling star that creates the crater in Limgrave is not a random event, but the first of many cosmic corrections that will reshape the world. Yet even in death, Radahn's influence persists. The gravitational magic that he mastered has infected the very ground of Caelid, creating pockets of twisted space where the laws of physics break down. The creatures that inhabit these zones are not merely mutated by the scarlet rot, but transformed by exposure to forces that should exist only in the void between worlds. The Academy of Raya Lucaria, where gravity magic was first studied, has become a monument to the dangers of such knowledge. The scholars who once praised Radahn's mastery now speak only in whispers, their research notes filled with warnings about the price of celestial manipulation. They understand now what they helped to create, and the weight of that knowledge has driven many to madness. As we turn from Radahn's cosmic horror to examine the next demigod in our catalog of darkness, remember that his story is not unique. Each of these beings represents a different aspect of power corrupted, of divine will twisted into something monstrous. The stars may be free now, but their liberation has come at a cost that the lands between will be paying for generations to come. The festival continues, but its purpose has changed. It is no longer a celebration of a fallen hero, but a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition. The warriors who gather there now do so not to honor Radahn, but to remember the price of trying to chain the heavens themselves. The scarlet nightmare that consumed Caelid was not born from war. It was birthed from love turned malignant, from devotion so pure it became the very definition of corruption. Malenia, the blade of Miquella, stands as perhaps the most tragic of all the demigods, for her fall was not driven by ambition or pride, but by an affection so deep it poisoned everything she touched. You have seen her in the depths of the Haligtree, that monument to her brother's dreams. You have witnessed the rot that flows from her like a crimson tide, transforming flesh into living agony. But the true horror of Malenia's existence lies not in what she became, but in what she was willing to sacrifice to protect the one thing she loved more than life itself. The scarlet rot that courses through her veins is not merely a disease. It is the physical manifestation of an outer god's influence, a cosmic parasite that feeds on suffering and spreads through acts of violence. From the moment of her birth, Malenia was chosen as its vessel, her divine blood serving as the perfect medium for its earthly manifestation. But here lies the first dark secret. She was not an unwilling victim. She embraced the rot, welcomed it into her very soul because it gave her the power to protect Miquella. Every bloom of the scarlet rot represents a moment when Malenia chose her brother's safety over the lives of countless innocents. The devastation of Caelid was not an accident of war, but a deliberate act of annihilation. When faced with Radahn's seemingly unstoppable advance, when her beloved Miquella's sanctuary was threatened, she made a choice that would haunt the lands between for eternity. She let the rot consume her completely, transforming herself into a living weapon of mass destruction. The process was not quick or painless. Ancient texts speak of the agony she endured as the rot spread through her body, eating away at her flesh from within. Her limbs, once perfect examples of divine craftsmanship, became twisted mockeries of their former beauty. Her eyes, which had once reflected the golden light of the Erd tree, turned milky white as the infection claimed her sight. Yet through it all, she smiled, for each moment of her suffering was a moment that Miquella remained safe, but the rot demanded more than just her body. It required her to become its apostle, to spread its influence wherever she walked. The clean-rot knights who serve her are not loyal soldiers, but infected victims, their devotion maintained through the same corruption that flows through her veins. They follow her not out of respect, but because the rot has hollowed out their minds, leaving only the base instinct to serve their mistress. The most disturbing aspect of Malenia's transformation is how it affected her relationship with Miquella himself. Her brother, trapped in eternal childhood, became the focal point of an obsession that transcended love and entered the realm of worship. She began to see him not as a person, but as a sacred object, something to be protected at all costs. This devotion blinded her to the fact that her very presence was slowly killing him, that the rot she carried was seeping into his sanctuary and corrupting his dreams. The battle with Radahn was not the glorious duel that bards sing of, but a massacre disguised as warfare. When Malenia bloomed that day, when she unleashed the full fury of the scarlet rot upon Caelid, she was not fighting to win a war, but to silence a voice that had dared to question her brother's divinity. Radahn's crime was not his ambition, but his independence, his refusal to bow before Miquella's supposed superiority. The aftermath of that battle reveals the true extent of Malenia's corruption. Caelid, once a verdant land of red earth and thriving wildlife, became a hellscape where the very air burns with infected spores. The creatures that inhabit it now are not animals, but living extensions of the rot, their bodies twisted into forms that serve only to spread the contagion further. Every tree that weeps crimson tears, every flower that blooms with poisonous beauty, is a testament to the price of Malenia's devotion. Yet perhaps the most chilling revelation is that Malenia's transformation was not complete. The figure you face in the Haligtree is merely the latest iteration of a being that has been slowly dying and being reborn for centuries. Each time she blooms, each time she allows the rot to consume her completely, she loses a little more of her humanity. The process is irreversible, and she knows it. She has seen the future that awaits her. A future where she becomes nothing more than a vessel for the outer god's will, and she has accepted it as the price of her love. The unalloyed gold that Miquella created was not merely a cure for the rot, but a desperate attempt to save his sister from her own devotion. He understood that her love for him was destroying them both, that her willingness to sacrifice everything for his sake was exactly what the outer god wanted. But his efforts came too late. The rot had already taken root too deeply, and Malenia's transformation was too far advanced to be reversed. When you finally face her in the roots of the Haligtree, what you encounter is not a warrior but a living prayer. A being whose entire existence has been reduced to a single overwhelming desire to protect something that no longer exists. The Miquella she serves is not the god of her memories but a corrupted echo, a shadow of divinity that feeds on her devotion while offering nothing in return. Her defeat brings not peace but revelation. As she falls, as the rot finally claims what remains of her humanity, she whispers words that chill the soul. Miquella, I'm sorry. For in that final moment, she understands the truth that her love had blinded her to. She was not protecting her brother but destroying him, not serving his will but enabling his corruption. The scarlet rot that spreads from her corpse is not the end of her story, but its beginning. For the outer god that claimed her does not release its vessels easily, and death is no barrier to its influence. The rot that bears her name will continue to spread, claiming new victims, creating new apostles, until the entire world becomes a garden of crimson flowers watered with blood and tears. These are the darkest truths hidden within the golden facade of the lands between. The demigods were not heroes fallen from grace, but instruments of cosmic horror, beings whose very existence was an affront to the natural order. Their stories are not tales of triumph, but warnings about the price of power, the cost of devotion, and the inevitable corruption that comes when mortals dare to play with forces beyond their comprehension. The Golden Order that once promised eternal peace has revealed itself to be a house of cards, built upon foundations of lies and maintained through acts of unspeakable horror. The demigods who were meant to be its greatest champions became its most dangerous enemies, not through rebellion but through the simple act of fulfilling their intended purpose. As you walk the paths of the lands between, as you witness the ruins of their civilization and the monsters that now inhabit their former glory, remember that this is not the end of their story, but merely another chapter in an endless cycle of corruption and decay. The greater will may have abandoned this realm, but its influence lingers like a poison in the very air, waiting for the next generation of would-be gods to fall victim to its promises of power. The darkness that consumed the demigods is not unique to them. It is the inevitable fate of all who seek to transcend their mortal limitations, who dare to reach for divinity without understanding the price that must be paid. Their stories serve as warnings written in blood and madness, reminders that some heights are too dangerous to climb and some truths too terrible to bear. In the end, the demigods achieved their greatest victory not through their triumphs, but through their failures. They showed us the true face of power, the real cost of ambition, and the ultimate futility of trying to escape the cycle of death and rebirth that governs all existence. Their legacy is not one of glory but of caution, a monument to the dangers of unchecked desire and the inevitable corruption that follows in its wake. The myths may call them heroes, but the truth is far darker. They were harbingers of the apocalypse, architects of their own destruction, and the final proof that even gods can fall when they forget what it means to be human. Their throne rooms have become tombs, their kingdoms have become wastelands, and their names have become curses spoken in the darkness by those who remember what they truly were. This is the legacy of the demigods of Elden Ring. Not a golden age of heroes, but a dark age of monsters, not a tale of triumph, but a warning about the price of power. And in the shadows of their fallen kingdoms, new horrors are already stirring, waiting for their chance to claim the thrones that blood and madness have left vacant.